Hey everyone, it's Zach Wright. Welcome back to the Chasing Success podcast. That might be the last time that I say that, not because we're ending episodes, but because we're rebranding. And if you listen to the last episode, then you understand why I haven't been putting out episodes or videos on my normal schedule, which was every other week on YouTube, every other week on podcast. But today's episode, I'm going to do a little bit of explaining, but then more so, I'm going to be talking about how I'm building my own software as a non-technical founder. And I'll get more into what I mean by that. But before I jump into that, for those who don't know, just a quick update, 2 minutes, maybe less. What I am doing is I'm decommissioning IMEO. Now I'm still taking on consulting clients to help build out the software, which I'll explain that a little bit later on too. But every single thing that I do is going to be focused on the software that I'm building. And as a result of that, I want my brand to represent that. I want the company brand to represent that, right? So Chasing Success will be changed. I already know the name. I'm not going to tell you yet. You'll have to wait for the next episode or the one after that. There's also going to be a LinkedIn community where we focus on remote work and flexible hybrid work. Flexible hybrid to me is where you don't have a specific schedule, but you can come into the office or you can work remotely or you can work on vacation. You can work from wherever, whenever, however, right? And I'm going to give some tips and tricks on that. I'm going to hopefully get some thought leaders in the remote working world in there to give their 2 cents on specific hot topics or trending topics. So be on the lookout for that. I'm also going to be building in public. So I can tell you the tagline of the LinkedIn group, but I will not tell you the title of it yet or the name of the software just yet because we are still building in stealth, which means we're building behind closed doors. Everything that we're doing is hush hush, other than with the founding advisor and the development team that I have. So the tagline is building the future of work in public. So you can kind of get an idea of what we might be developing. So there you go. That's the update. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today is, as I mentioned, how I'm building a software as a non-technical founder. Now, let me explain non-technical in the sense of me, right? Because I am technical from an operations standpoint. So I've implemented certain applications into organizations, specifically sales and marketing type tools. I've also implemented performance management tools into certain organizations. But as far as hard coding, building from scratch, I am not technical. The only type of coding that I know a little bit of, and I'm being very generous to myself whenever I say I know a little bit of it, is from the last position where I learned a little bit of CSS and HTML, but it wasn't from scratch. It was readapting the code that was already there, and I barely did that well. So with that being said, I am non-technical in the sense of building a software. So just a little bit of background on how I got to the place that I'm at, and I'll tell you where I'm at in a second. But about 2 years ago, I had an idea for remote working companies and flexible hybrid companies. And that idea turned into a software idea. Now, before any of that, I had my thesis paper which is the Happy Productive Worker thesis. I feel like I talk about it all the time, so I apologize. But I talk about it because it led me into the world of organizational psychology. It led me into the world of making the workplace better or wanting to make the workplace better. It led me into how to become a better leader, how to become a better manager, how to help others grow into their positions as well. And eventually that led me into wanting to be in HR. HR led me to IT staffing because you had to have 2 years of HR experience for an entry level position. I did a whole podcast on that. I won't go into it. But From there, I got into tech. So this is where the worlds collide. Organizational psychology meets tech, right? How do we build a software that allows people to have a better working experience? So just let your brain sink in on that until the episode where I actually announce the company name, what we do, and all that kind of stuff. So about 2 years ago, to get back to the original point, about 2 years ago, maybe longer now, I had this idea for an OKR software. Now, that's not what we're building. That's why I can say it right now. That's not what we're building, but that's where I started. And so I started looking around for an offshore team because I wanted a team that I could be able to afford, but I also wanted to make sure that they were really solid, not just, I mean, obviously from a technical perspective, but were they willing to work with me? Were they willing to build a relationship with me? And I ended up running across, after several different research on no code or low code, or this outsourcing team versus this outsourcing team, or you could hire a development team and tell them all that kind of stuff. I eventually ran across, thanks to the CEO of Success with Systems, Alistair. He told me, I told him about the idea for the OKR software, which is now not what we're building, just to clarify. He told me about Talla and DTech Systems, DTECH systems.co. Check them out. If you haven't heard of them, check them out and set up a meeting with Talla, because you'll understand why I chose to go forward with DTech Systems for software development. Now, he takes a unique approach, but before I get into that, let me let me tell you how patient he was and DTech was. So I mentioned this was 2 years ago. I got introduced to Talla, and I had probably 5 or 6 conversations with him throughout a year-long period. I was still working at the time. I was working at Kumu, an enterprise video solution. They got acquired. And as they got acquired, I had restricted stock units. I didn't get rich or anything, but I was able to have money where I felt comfortable with taking that money and investing it into my idea that has now shifted into a real software that is valuable. It provides value to the ICPs that we're targeting. Now, we're still in the early stage, and we're starting development soon, July 3rd to be exact. Maybe this episode comes out then, or it comes out a little bit earlier or a little bit later. But you might be asking, okay, you found this person, you talked to him for a year, now what? Well, once the acquisition went through, I was trying to figure out what was going to happen next. I had a VP of operations position lined up for me for a I can't remember the industry that I was in, but I had it lined up for me. I was supposed to start March, early March, the first week of March, the second week of March. The CEO tells me that he's having second guesses on the company in its entirety. He was, anyway, no hard feelings. I think I mentioned that in another episode, but honestly, it was a good thing that happened to me, because a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to start when I'm ready, or after this position, I'll do this, or they always come up with an extended excuse, right? Because if I was playing this game with myself, I would have said, okay, well, after I'm VP of operations for a year, for 2 years, we bring this company either public, or we get it exited through an acquisition, then I'll build out the software. And sometimes bad things happen to you to show you what you really should be doing. And that's how I look at it. So the company was acquired, the VP of operations position fell through. I was looking for the next position. I had a little bit of money to hold me over, but I had this idea that kept coming at me. And I've already been talking to D-Tech for a year. So I contact Tala again and I say, hey, I have some updates to the software. It's not an OKR software anymore. It's something much bigger, something much better. And he's probably like, oh, okay, another call with Zach. Let's do it. I don't mind talking to him. So let's talk to him. He probably didn't think that I was ready to move forward, but I showed him something that I already created. So this was one of the steps as a non-technical founder. So, and a little bit on my background for one position, I was a program management office lead. So I was able to understand the software development life cycle. And within a product, you have to develop product requirements documents, right? And so I built out a product requirements document just as a head start. I ran him through it. He understood the idea. He really connected with it because he has a hybrid / remote organization of around 50 employees. And his confidence in the software itself gave me even more confidence to say, okay, now it's time to move forward. And the opportunity and the time is correct. And so after we had that conversation, I got the proposal from his team. I looked at the proposal. It was higher than the proposal that I had asked for in the previous conversations that I had, but it made sense because it was a larger project and inflation and everything like that. So that's a tool. That's a tip, actually. Like the longer you wait, the higher the prices are going to go. So if you have an idea, you believe in it, you've done your research and you feel comfortable, like go forward. Don't wait until you're ready because you'll never be ready. So that was step 1, 2, whatever we want to call it. We get to the proposal. And the way that this is where I'll come back to how they approach it. So they don't go straight into development. And I think that this is what really attracted me to them, because instead of straight into development, they go with phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And so phase 1 is project conceptualization. Now, I could have been an arrogant founder and said, well, I have the software requirements document right here. Everything's here. Let's go build it, whatever. But the importance of project conceptualization, especially if you're a non-technical founder, and the way that they approach it is, we had these meetings. We started scheduling meetings. We had a kickoff meeting, and then we had a recurring cadence. And so as we were having these meetings, I was running through and I was speaking out loud what I had written on the document, the Google Doc. And as I was speaking them out loud, they were asking me questions and saying, okay, well, what does that mean? Can you explain a little bit differently? Or, okay, I understand that, but how will this work? And so they're asking you certain questions that you might not ask yourself. And this is the good thing, where if you have a technical founder, you're probably bouncing ideas off of each other, or just a partner in general, you're probably bouncing ideas off of each other. But if you have a team like this and they're experts in their field, they can ask you the right questions. They can have you think about things that you're not thinking about, because especially first-time founders, you're probably a little bit nervous on sharing what you're going to build, because that first sign of rejection, or that first opinion that is different than yours, you're like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done this. But that's not how it works, right? They were asking questions, they were double checking, they were triple checking, they were making sure. And then once we went through the entire document and we went through everything that we had to understand, so they could understand the vision, the mission, the goals of the company, why I'm building it, who's the audience. And so on the back end, from a non-technical perspective, I'm going to keep saying that. You're probably going to get tired of me saying non-technical, but that's the whole goal of this podcast episode. So from a non-technical perspective, what I was doing on my end was, yes, I did the software requirements document, but I also did some market research. And I'm very heavy into go-to-market operations, go-to-market in general. So I started researching, okay, who are the competitors in this field? What do their products have? What do I like about their products? What do I not like about their products? If I use that product, what were some of the things that people were saying about that product that I don't want to have in my product, right? For example, I worked with, I won't say their name, but I worked with a tool and a lot of people had issues with navigation. And now that's one of the objection handlers that I use whenever somebody says, okay, well, this is good, because I've been doing product validation calls. Whenever they say this is a good idea, but what about this? And it just comes naturally to me because I've used the tool and I know the difference in what we're building. And our navigation is going to be a lot easier. So anyway, I also started researching the ICP. And it's good. Like, a lot of people will say, well, you don't want to go into a market that's saturated, or you don't want to go into a market that has all these tools already. But the good thing about going into a market where it has similar tools, but you're going in as a blue ocean strategy, is that you know that there's a method or there's a tool out there that has penetrated the market, that has either taken over or done very successful. And so you can learn from their lessons of mistakes and avoid them. And you can learn from their successes and copy them, but make them your own, right? So you got to be careful, because you don't want to copy them exactly. Like, we look at, like, I just rewatched The Social Network for like the fifth time the other day. And if we look at Mark Zuckerberg versus the twins, I can't remember their name. They tried to recreate what Mark Zuckerberg created, and it didn't do as successful, right? And it's because they don't have the right passion for what they were. I think that they were after money, where Mark was after connecting the world. Now, whether you like him or hate him or whatever the case is, he did that. He connected the world through Facebook, right? Love it or hate it, it's what happened. So don't just copy and make it your own, where it makes sense, where you believe in what you're doing, right? Okay. So now the other piece of the puzzle within project conceptualization is they take all this feedback that you're giving them, the questions, the things that they already have from their expertise, and they break it down into, okay, this is the feature list. These are the categories that will fall under. Now, I also, just to kind of go back on the go-to-market side, because I think I missed delivering the point there. What I was doing on my end was building out the ICP, building out the messaging, building out the brand, building out what we would be known for. How will we be marketed? We're going to be against the grain. We're going to go against some of the people out there who I look up to. Like, the person that always comes to my mind is Jamie Dimon. I actually really like his story. I think that he has grit. I think he has wherewithal of things that are happening, but I don't agree with him on the remote work aspect and people not being as productive. So we're going to be against the grain. We're going to be educational. We're going to push the limits. We're going to be like Apple whenever they did the 1984 ad. Is kind of the way that I explain it. So stay tuned for that. Now, some of the other things that I was building out here was the business documents. So legal documents. So you got your NDA, you got your IP, you got your SAFE, which is, if you plan on having early adopters, it's your simple agreement for future equities. Now, I have a founding advisor, Alex Couture, shout out to him. I have a founding advisor who has ran their own company for 9 or 10 years, got it sold to Tyler Technologies, and he has been able to help me in specific areas. So that's another thing. Non-technical, technical, get you a founding advisor who understands what you're trying to build. Now, it doesn't have to be the exact product. Like they don't have to be industry experts in that product or that industry, but they should know. Like he's a SaaS founder. He knows the idiosyncrasies of SaaS. He is a person who is very knowledgeable on tech startups. He works with a lot of other tech startups. So find somebody like that. Okay. So now you can already see, as a non-technical founder, I have two game changers. I have one, which is a solid, experienced software development team. And then I have a experienced founding advisor, right? So think about those things as you're building your own. Okay. Now, after project conceptualization, we go into the development of UI, UX, user interface, and user experience. Now, this was amazing. Now, I have a little bit of design capabilities in my toolkit. So what I did, you don't have to do this because you hire designers and developers for a reason. So this is optional, but if you can, I think it will definitely help you in the long run explaining your situation or your product idea to the designers. So what I did was I took the concept of the software that I wanted to build and I built out these rough draft wireframes. Now, if you look at these wireframes, they were created in Canva, but compared to the UI UX that we have now, we have a full prototype that we can show you if you're interested and you don't want to wait and you want to join our list. Reach out to me. You can reach out to, well, I can't say the email because it has the title on there, but you can reach out to me on the IMEO email too. So zwright@imeoconsulting.com. Just put interested in seeing the prototype for your new software. And then I'll know that you watched this episode or listen to it. But anyway, I built out this chicken scratch wireframes, but what it did was it allowed the designer and the product manager / project manager to understand better of what I was trying to create. And that's good because as a non-technical founder, you probably have a good sense of the vision. You can picture it from looking at other softwares or hearing other people speak about how this functionality does this and that. If you can put it to pen and paper or you can put it on a Canva document like I did, that's going to help them. It's going to help them out a lot. Now, one of the other things that I did that helped them out where they were able to kind of speed up the UI UX development was I created a brand guideline. So it had brand imagery, it had brand fonts, it had brand colors, it had brand messaging, it had brand hierarchy. It had every single thing that they needed to understand, okay, like what do you want your brand to be? What do you want it to look like? So they didn't have to think about that and we didn't have to talk about it because I already created that. Now, some of the other things that I didn't mention on the back end, but I think that this is important because if you're non-technical and you're outsourcing your development, you need to be able to not just be sitting on your ass, you need to be able to be doing things that moves the needle forward. So whenever development starts, you can launch your company. Whenever development is going on, you have a game plan for sales, marketing, onboarding, all this kind of stuff. Now, some of the things you can plan it out, but you won't necessarily be able to do it until it's actually time, like the onboarding piece of it or customer success. We won't be able to actually do that until we get our first customer, right? But what I've been doing on the back end is I have a full it's probably almost 100 pages, if not more, of just notes that I've been documenting. And that goes from go-to-market strategy. It goes from mission, vision, core values. It goes to my value proposition. It goes to the brand messaging. It goes through every single thing. Now, in addition to all that, some of the things are linked to it because I have a full-on company launch plan. And we haven't launched yet. We are very close to launching. And that's why I wanted to do this episode, is to just give you an update, but also make it relative to or relevant to anybody who is a non-technical founder or somebody who is non-technical that wants to take this approach. And so basically what you're doing as they're developing, you're doing every single thing other than development. And that is extremely important because you can't just build it and they'll come, right? Field of Dreams was a lie. No offense, Kevin Costner. So I say that to get back to UI UX. We are, like I said, we have a working prototype now that we can walk you through if you're interested. Remote and flexible hybrid organizations looking to stay connected and engaged and build culture remotely. If you're interested in that, reach out to me. Now, phase 3, I can't talk too much about this yet because we are starting soon. But every single thing in phase 1 and phase 2 was worth every single penny. Because 1, it made D-Tech and I a lot closer. They're actually going to be our first customers. And that's unique, right? Because whenever we start our beta program, even before our beta program, we can launch this into D-Tech. They can use it and give us real-time feedback. And then what's even more amazing is that feedback is going to go to the developers using the tool. So they'll be able to update it where it makes sense on that, right? And so as we enter phase 3 of development, there are a lot of things that we discussed in UI UX that would have been detrimental if we just skipped phase 1 and 2 and went straight to development like a lot of these outsourcing companies do. I would have lost a lot of money. I would have lost a lot of time. I would have had a terrible MVP. So what I recommend is, if you are a non-technical founder, you do your research on your end. Is there a market for what your idea is? Are there competitors already out there? How are they performing? Go to their websites. If you don't know how to do an ICP or an ideal customer profile, Google it, YouTube it. There's TK. I want to say it's TK Trader. He's on YouTube. He has tons of SaaS and go-to-market videos out there. There's so much out there. You can't just sit on your butt and hope and wish that you're going to have the next Facebook or the next Apple or the next Amazon or the next HubSpot, Salesforce. You name the tech company. You can't just sit there and do that, right? You can hire and outsource somebody, but while they're working, you need to be able to be working too, right? So do these things that I mentioned, but shop around, get several quotes from different outsourcing companies if you choose to use outsourcing. If you choose to get a technical founder, maybe don't start them as a partner right away. Have them work up to a partner who has equity in the firm or the company. Get a founding advisor who's been there and done what you're trying to do, so they can help guide you to avoid certain mistakes that they might have made, or certain mistakes that they've seen other companies make that you haven't seen because you don't work with all those tech startup companies, right? So this is just how I've been able to do it. But I want to wrap up and say, right now, we are a few days away from the kickoff to begin development. And the UI UX is extremely impressive to me. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm excited for this software to get into the hands of a lot of companies that need it, especially right now. And now you know where I'm at. But just as a reminder, so you can be excited about the next episode, what I'll be talking about in the next episode or the episode after, I won't make any promises, is it's going to be either the company launch or another quick update or another update on what non-technical founders can do while the development team is developing. And so we will have a LinkedIn community that I hope is very engaging. We'll try to do everything we can to do that. It also takes the members in there to be active and all that. We'll eventually be launching a beta program for people to sign up to. I'll be sharing the website that we have right now. It will be being tweaked ever so often as we get the full development completed. But if you're interested in what I'm talking about in this episode, there's going to be more like this with more specific product updates. We are building in public, still in stealth now, but soon we'll be building in public. So if you're interested in that, keep listening to the episodes to come and subscribe, follow, whatever you do on YouTube or podcast to make sure that you don't miss that. If you know a non-technical founder and you found this interesting, go ahead and share it with them. And if you have any questions, reach out to me, zwright@imeoconsulting.com. I'll try to answer those, or find me on LinkedIn. It's Zachary A. Wright, MBA, LL or LSSB, Lean Six Sigma Belt. Anyway, find me on there. I look like this. If you're listening, then you didn't get that. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.